So, thanks for joining me today. I wanted to share with you a little bit about my journey and how the Tooth and Gum Regenerator program came to be. So, in early 2000, I went to my dentist. I went regularly for checkups, and at this particular time, I was having some problems. I had some gum bleeding, and there was quite a lot of pain and sensitivity around one of my molars. And I went to have a checkup. And overall, there was quite a lot of bleeding in the gums in my mouth generally. And the dentist checked the pockets for this particular tooth that actually has an extra cusp, which is one of the reasons that I have this pocketing occurring. And as a result of the pocketing, food often got trapped in the pockets. That led to more infection and bacterial accumulation. And the result is that the normal healthy pockets that are around 1 to 3 millimeters, they actually increased. And by the time I got to the dentist, the pockets were around 8 millimeters. And the other thing that I had noticed, or rather actually, the dentist pointed out that the tooth was beginning to loosen. I didn't know that. I hadn't noticed that because it was only a little bit. It's not like the tooth was really wobbly, but there was a small amount of movement in the tooth, and that was indicating actually that the infections were starting to cause some bone loss in the jawbone. So overall, not great. The dentist took a look at it, again, finished off all his checks and his evaluation. The dentist then went on to give me his advice and the conclusion from everything that he'd been seeing. And he said to me, "You're going to need to have a number of procedures. You're probably better off to do them sooner rather than later, simply because there's not really very much you're going to be able to do. The bone loss is going to increase. And the problem with that is that if the infection continues and I continue to lose more jawbone, then it's problematic because it's going to be difficult to have an implant, because if you're going to have an implant, you need bone into which you have to put the implant. And if you're losing bone, then you have a problem. Then you have to start having some bone grafts, and it all gets very complicated, very invasive, and actually very expensive. So the suggestion was that certainly to monitor what was going on. Most importantly, probably better to take action sooner rather than later. This was the implication. So to summarize, overall, what was being suggested was, number one, that I would need gum surgery. Number two, that I would need to have the tooth removed because the infection was quite advanced. There was already some bone loss going on, and it was only going to be a question of time until the infection got so bad and I guess ultimately reached the root canal. And then you need to either have root canal treatment or have the tooth extracted. And I was advised that I would need to have the tooth extracted and an implant. And that was really quite a shock because, yes, I had some gum bleeding and there was some infection, but it's not like I was in extreme pain or discomfort. The bleeding, the gums were a little bit sensitive, and certainly around the area of the tooth where there was the pocketing was a little bit uncomfortable, but not in a million years did I think that, oh, I'm going to have my tooth out, gum surgery and an implant. And that was a shock. And it didn't really sit well with me because I thought, surely there's something I can do. And I asked my dentist, I said, look, surely there's something I can do to help improve the situation and reduce the inflammation and the infections. And he said, no. The conclusion was that other than maintaining good hygiene, going to the hygienist regularly, there wasn't going to be a lot that I was going to be able to do. And that it's merely a question of time until I had to undergo those various procedures. And so, again, I was very unhappy about that. And actually, given my background and what I was doing with Get Fit, I knew that there would be a solution and certainly that there would be something that I can do to improve the condition of my mouth. I knew that I would be able to start improving the infections, that I would be able to start reducing my gum bleeding. And what I wasn't 100% sure on was what I could do for the bone loss, how I could maybe start restoring bone density and reducing the gum pockets. I had no idea. It wasn't anything that I knew about and anything that I'd had experience of previously. I listened to what the dentist had to say, and then finally he concluded. And before I left the dentist, I had a little quote for the work that was to be done. And suffice it to say, it was many thousands of pounds. Now, this was over 20 years ago, a very expensive trip to the dentist, and it left me with a lot to think about. However, as soon as I had left, I began to investigate and research what I could do. And lo and behold, within a couple of weeks, I got significant improvement in the health of my gums. The bleeding started to reduce, the discomfort around the pockets and the molar that had the extra cusp where I had pocketing. Within a couple of weeks of me starting to do some work on it and learn what I could do to improve and reduce the infection, reduce the inflammation, that was my immediate work, and that's what I started on. And after about a month, 6 weeks, I went back to the hygienist, and they confirmed again that I'd reduced the infection and the bleeding by around 20%, I think 30% within about a month. And so I continued with my program, and also I continued to investigate and research and see what I could discover about how to deal with the longer term issues of the bone loss, potential root canal issues, and how could I restore bone density. And that was the complex that I was working on. And slowly I started to see some gains, some improvements. I was working with the dentist, which actually worked out very well, although I frankly didn't agree with their approach that, there was nothing I could do, and that what I was advised to do was just, we'll wait, we'll watch, we'll monitor until you need the procedures. And the difference is that what I chose to do enabled me to be proactive in the interim and start taking action and start reducing the infections and improving the overall biological environment in my mouth. Bleeding reduced significantly, infection started to reduce. And as I went to the dentist, as I said, the great thing about going to the dentist was that they monitored everything for me. They took x-rays, I could check on bone density, they checked pocket depths, they would give me an idea of how the gum bleeding was going, how my hygiene was going. And that enabled me, I used everything that the dentist was telling me as my benchmark as to how my program was working for me. And suffice it to say, I recently went to the dentist. We're now in 2026. And I had a recent visit to the dentist. They took an x-ray, they checked the pocketing, they checked the bleeding. And whereas in early 2000, I was advised, you're going to need gum surgery, you're going to need to have the tooth removed, you're going to need to have an implant, and potentially even a bone graft because the jawbone was deteriorating. So 2026, over 20 years later, I still have my tooth. The tooth has firmed up. And as I said, it's an ongoing challenge for me. It's a little bit unique because I have this extra cusp on the tooth, which means I have to work constantly at maintaining the tooth, cleaning it, making sure that there's minimal infection. So my condition is a little bit, I would say, more challenging than most because it doesn't go away. This cusp on my tooth, unless I actually have that tooth removed, the driver of the infections and the pocketing is not going anywhere. It's a mechanical issue, which means that I have to deal with that ongoing. But I live with that. And actually, it's enabled me to develop a really effective and powerful program that I hope you will enjoy and that I hope will inspire you because, I felt quite powerless when I was at the dentist, being told nothing you can do. You just have to wait and see, and then we'll do what we need to do. And it's very nice to know that there's a lot that you can do that will generate results, that you will be able to quantify and measure, checking in with your dentist and the oral hygienist, checking your pockets, and x-raying the teeth and checking the bleeding of the gums. You'll see the progress. It's not theory. You do the work and simply you'll see the results. Follow the formula and you'll start to see some improvements. And please be clear, I'm not presenting this as an overnight miracle cure. It's not. You need to work at maintaining the condition of your mouth because inevitably you're eating every day. And that means we're introducing potential bacteria that can lead to infections and pocketing and periodontal issues. So you need to be proactive Maintenance needs to be consistent daily. And it's not a big deal. Really, I can say we can get the program down to 5 to 10 minutes of a morning and 5 to 10 minutes of an evening. And you can do more. And actually, I have ended up with my protocol. Part of what I do in the night is that I'm working on my gums and my teeth 5 minutes sometimes at a time, sometimes even a little bit more, as I'm activating the gums, increasing blood supply, and working on increasing bone density. It feels good. And I'm seeing the results. I still have my tooth and things. And actually, the condition of my mouth and my teeth is actually improving year on year. So that's my story for you. I hope that inspires and gives you some hope that there's a tremendous amount that you can do. As I said, it's not an overnight miracle cure. It takes work, it takes maintenance, nothing too onerous in the overall scheme of things. And take a look at the page below. I've given you information about what the program is about, what it involves. And at the very end of the page, there's a frequently asked questions section, and that should answer all the questions that you have. Anyway, take a look. I hope it inspires, and I hope to see you on the program. Take care.